Welcome to Bluebook Basics. My name is Jessica Almeida, and I'm a librarian at the UMass Law Library. In today's video, I will be discussing just a few of the citation formats for internet resources. We're going to start with main pages of websites, and that's Rule 18.2.2 of the 22nd edition of the Blue Book. You can see I have an example here, but first let's go over the general format. As you can see, I have three different examples here, and let me explain. The first one is just the main page title in small caps, comma, URL, and then in parentheses, you will put last visited and then the date. End your parentheses and a period. Now, if you're planning to be published, I would suggest one of two things. If you have access to PermaCC, you PermaCC the link and then add it in brackets here in your footnote. Now, if you don't have access to PermaCC, I would suggest that you take maybe a screenshot or save it as a PDF and then use this specific citation format where you would put on file with author, and then you would keep that just in case the editors needed to see a copy of it. I've also added down below the shortcut for small caps for either a PC or a Mac. Let's take a look at our example and how it would fit in this format. Okay, so we have the main page, the title of the main page, which is Legal Services Corporation. It's in small caps, comma, and then we have the URL, and then last visited and the date in parentheses, and then we end it with a period. Here's how it would look as a footnote 13. If I needed to cite to it again right away, look at footnote 14. I just do an id. Id is italicized, but notice that there's no pin cite because it's a website. And then later on again, I need to reference or I need to cite to this specific page. So in footnote 20, I put Legal Services Corporation. Notice that it's in small caps. So whatever the format is here, you're going to bring it down for your supernote. So Legal Services Corporation, comma, supra is italicized, note, and then 13 period. Now I'm just telling the reader the full citation is in footnote 13, where you can find it right here. A note about supernotes. I suggest that you finalize all of the text of your paper before tackling your supernotes. Just because if you decide to move around pieces of or sections of your paper, or you add a lot of things, that is going to shift your super notes and can get very confusing. So I always tell students, wait until your text is finalized and then tackle your super notes. Let's look at the subpage of a website. So this is not, you're not citing to the general website, you're citing to a certain page within the larger website. And here's our example. Let's look at the basic format. So I've given you two, depending on whether or not you have an author or you have a date. So for instance, if you have an author, you'd put the author's name, comma, the title of the subpage is italicized, comma, the title of the main page is going to be in small caps and it's abbreviated. The date is going to be, if you have a date, it's going to be in parentheses, comma, the URL, and a period. Now, if you don't have an author or you don't have a date, you would just do the title of the subpage, italicized, comma, the title of the main page, abbreviated using small caps, comma, the URL, and the last date last visited. So in parentheses, you would put last visited and the date that you last looked at that website and a period. Shortcut for small caps is below. Let's take a look at how this would work with our example. Okay, so here we have legal needs monitoring pilot. So that is the sub page. It is italicized. We have a comma. Then we have Legal Services Corporation. It's abbreviated. It's in small caps. And then you have the URL. And because there was no date on this page, I did last visited and the date I last visited this page in parentheses and a period. You can consult tables 6, 10, and 13 to help you abbreviate those main pages. Here's how it would look in the footnotes. You'll see footnote 16 is the full site. 17, if I needed to cite to it again right away, I would use an ID period, that is italicized. And then later on, if I needed to cite to it again, I would use a supernote. So here you would see footnote 22, legal needs monitoring pilot. Now, I didn't have an author, so I used the title and I used the same format as the title. So notice that it's italicized, comma, supra, which is also italicized, note 16, and then a period. And what I'm telling my reader is look at note 16, footnote 16, and that's where you will find the full citation. So next, what we're going to be looking at is online sources with original pagination. So, or PDFs, right? So you might come across a report online that you would like to reference or to cite to. And what it is really just a PDF online and it has page numbers. You want to use rule 18.2.1 of the 22nd edition of the Blue Book. And here, let's take a look at the general format. So I gave you two examples here. One is if you're just doing your paper for a class, and the other one is if you have access to Perma CC and you would like to get published. So the first one, it's author, comma, the title of the PDF is italicized, comma, the publisher or publication title would be in small caps. You could have your pin site and then the date that it was published would be in parentheses, comma, the URL period. Now to use this one, I usually tell students that what you want to see, and you'll see it in my example, is that the URL is going to end in PDF. Let's take a look at that. So here we did not have an author for this particular report. What we had was the title, and it was quite a long title. And then we had the group that produced it. So it was this Coordinating Council of Juvenile Justice and Delinquent Prevention. I used tables 6, 10, and 13 in order to abbreviate some of the words. Then I put in the date in parentheses. So this was January 2025, comma, and then I put the URL. Now notice my URL ends in PDF. And then of course we always end with a period. Remember, the shortcut for small caps is right above there for you for either a PC or a Mac. And this is how it would look. So look at footnote 18. This is the full site. And then in 19, I go ahead, I cite right to it again. So I did an id. Now, because it's a PDF, there's pagination, there's page numbers, right? So I'm able to, as you can see in my full site, I have a pin site of 3. And then in my ID period, and then of course italicized at, and then my pin site is 5. So I'm telling my reader I am citing specifically to page 5. Now notice that there is another source that's being used for footnote 20. So that means when I go back to cite it again in 21, I have to do a supranote. Because there was no author, I used the title and I used the same format, so it's italicized, comma, supra is italicized, note 18, comma, at 7. 7 is my pin site. I'm telling the reader, go to page 7. That's where I cited to. That's the information I'm citing. And really, the supernote is just saying if you want the full site, you need to look at footnote 18. So you would go up here and here's footnote 18. Okay, so this is our last format that we're going to discuss in this video, and it's blog posts. Now, blogs are Rule 18.2.2 of the 22nd edition of the Bluebook. Here is our example. Let's take a look at the format first, of course. We have the author's full name. The title of the blog post is italicized. The title of the blog is in small caps and abbreviated if necessary. Then in parentheses, you have the date and time if it's on the site, you use the date and the time, and then comma URL. And then we always end with a period. The second one is just if you have access to PermaCC and you're thinking about getting published, you can do the brackets. You can give it a PermaCC link and put that link in brackets at the end. Let's take a look at the format with my example. So we have the author's name, comma, the title of the blog post, italicized, comma, this is the name of the blog, and it is in small caps. The date this specific blog post was published is here in parentheses, comma, and then the URL with a period at the end. Let's take a look at what it looks like in my footnotes. Here we have footnote 23. It's the full footnote for this blog post. If I was going to cite to it again right away, we would do an id. Because it's a blog post and there's no pages, there's no page numbers, we don't need to do a pin site. We would just do id period italicized. And then notice once again, I have cited something else for 25. So when I want to cite this blog post again for 26, I need to do a supranote. So I have the author's last name, comma, supra, italicized, note, and then where I would find the footnote where I would find the full site, and then a period. So I'm telling the reader, if you want to know more, go to the full site, which is at footnote 23. And we look at 23 and there it is. Okay. Just going to mention one more time that when you're writing your paper, please consider doing your super notes last, just to make it a little bit more, a little less confusing if you do a lot of editing to your text. That is just some of the formats for internet resources in the 22nd edition of the Bluebook. If you have any questions on this or anything to do with academic writing and using the Bluebook for footnote citations, please feel free to contact me directly or any of the law librarians at lawlib@umassd.edu. Have a great day.